I'm starting early because I want to just show you a little video clip from an event we put on at Tyringham. As I said, this is a series of DMT symposia, and we did a kind of private invited symposia at Tyringham Hall to get the greatest minds we thought of who had anything to do with DMT entities, get them all together in a big place for a week and entertain them, and then get them to give talks about what they thought DMT entities were all about. And the result of that was a book called DMT Dialogues. But I'm going to show you a little video clip of that event.
So we're here at Tyringham Hall, the home of Anton Bilton, and the beautiful grounds of this 18th century manor house.
As you can see by the incredible Lutyens Theosophical Temple of Music over there, it's got the right feeling at Tyringham that we're on a method of inquiry into something exciting and unusual, into the esoteric.
So we brought together a range of people from different disciplines. We're here for what's been called an entheogenic plant sentience symposium, but we're specifically looking at the issues surrounding the DMT experience.
The world is round, no Galileo, the world is flat. You know, one thing that we must always be aware of is the brave, pioneering scientist's mind. It's the one that thinks outside the circle. It's the one we should listen to.
So we brought together a range of people from different disciplines, religious studies, cultural historians.
I teach at the University of Minnesota at the Center for Spirituality and Healing.
My scientific career began at the age of 17 when I worked for a multinational drug company in their LSD research laboratory.
Chemist stroke pharmacologist. I'm not a scientist. I'm an author. Computational neurobiology.
Anthropologists, physicists.
I'm a historian of religion.
I'm a healer, musician.
I'm very interested in the search for spirituality and religion in the modern world.
Psychopharmacologists, ethnobotanists, ethnopharmacologists, psychologists.
Anthropologists talk about non-ordinary experience. This is a non-ordinary experience for me.
You get invited to this strange gathering of weird scientists and mystics and world travelers, and you all talk about some extraordinary new technology that's been discovered.
A concentration of some of the most important thinkers in psychedelic theory, theory of consciousness, theory of reality.
Intense, bizarre and fascinating discussions.
A unique experience, an incredible meeting of minds.
We're here at this conference because we're obsessed with DMT.
People have the most extraordinary experiences under the influence of DMT. It's naturally occurring in the body. It's found everywhere in nature.
Nature is drenched in DMT.
And it gives rise to some of the most intense psychedelic experiences that you can have.
There appear to be non-human resident intelligences that interact with us, that want us to understand something.
Wake up, pay attention.
We've got a lot of stuff we've got to tell you. We've only got a few minutes.
They are eager to tell us something.
One or two people claiming to have experienced such entities may be dismissed as hallucinating. But when a couple of hundred people report such an experience, and the reports, while mostly independent, are curiously similar, it is not so easy to dismiss them in this way.
They also call these entities Ashaninka, which is their word for themselves. They say these Maninkari, they are members of our tribe, Ashaninka. And given that there are Maninkari animating plants and animals inside plants and animals, then plants and animals are also Ashaninka, also members of our tribe.
Sometimes the curandero puts the leaves into an ayahuasca brew and will get in touch with the spirit of the plant and can get knowledge about its healing potentials.
I had experiences that were extremely powerful, and the net effect of that was that it stopped me using cannabis completely.
Anything that is unconscious as a behavioral pattern, ayahuasca has an unerring ability to bring that into the light of awareness for you, to present it to you for your consideration. People who come with addictions have an opportunity to really see these aspects of their being, and in seeing them, release them or modify them.
Are they kind of alien beings, perhaps? Are these entities really just mischievous elves from another dimension?
What they are and who they are remains up for question.
Why should these spirit molecules only be activated in altered states of consciousness? What use could they possibly be?
Are they ourselves in a kind of discarnate state, perhaps somewhere we come from and somewhere we go to after death? Or are they somehow our future selves, kind of sending back information about our destiny from the future?
Ayahuasca is very interesting because 20 years ago, 30 years ago, no one knew what it was, no one cared what it was.
The transition of worldview that's going on at the moment is being partly driven through psychedelic experience. So this is really at a cutting edge.
Now it's sort of gone onto this global stage.
No one is denying the importance of science, but it's this scientism, which is the sort of fundamentalist form of science, which says that all there is the material world and consciousness is produced by the brain, and that's it. That's what really one is arguing with.
But I think the transition that's happening at the moment is a move from materialism, which has dominated science for more than 100 years, to rediscovery of the idea of a living world, a living, organic, evolving cosmos.
So I'm interested in how this meme has impacted popular culture and esoteric circles.
Our consciousness equipment is actually in poor shape. It's been degenerating.
I think the teacher plants are trying to remind us that we are and we have a responsibility to the entire community of species, and we need to remember who we are and change our attitude towards nature. We're not talking about fairy godmothers here. We're talking about a very complex system of chemical and biochemical and geochemical processes that are maintaining stability on this planet.
We need to open our minds to these extraordinary experiences and consider what they might mean.
Entities clearly have a lot to show us, and they have a lot to tell us. What we need to work out is how we can spend more time in their realm, what kind of questions we might want to ask them, and perhaps even perform experiments within the DMT space and bring back valuable data.
Ladies and gentlemen, this gathering is the most amazing gathering on this topic I have ever attended.
Kind of unprecedented to have all those remarkable beings all in the same room together.
That's what we're doing here. We're at the far edges of science.
So I'm happy to take questions now. Thank you very much.
So let us proceed with a truly pluralistic and open-minded approach, and remember that beliefs are prisons because our convictions can make us convicts.
Okie dokie, well, that's the movie over with. Let's have some real gubbins, shall we then? If I can get this working. So, this is the talk I'm going to give. That meeting kind of inspired the following research, really. So we had a follow-up meeting to that, and we got together a whole bunch of other different kind of scholars and researchers, and we tried to kind of devise a way in which we could try to map the topography of the DMT realm and make up communication with the entities, perhaps set up some kind of interdimensional embassy and send out ambassadors to kind of meet the other beings, and just trying to work out a way of how we empirically get into that realm and establish whether or not these things are really real. I know everyone says, oh no, don't bother with the ontological questions, but it is really a big thing. It's like, well, you either accept they're real or you think they're not real, but nobody really knows. So how can we actually get at this scientifically and empirically? So we stupidly took on the challenge, and we thought we'd give it a go of trying to research that. It's the same thing. You'll know what DMT is. You probably know Stephen Sarah, who was the first person to kind of synthesize it and then inject himself with it. Actually pegged really neat my quote. And of course he had his encounter experience. The whistling has stopped. I've arrived, and in front of me are two quiet, sunlit gods. They gaze at me and nod in a friendly manner. I think they are welcoming me into this new world. Not always though, sometimes they're not so friendly. huge kind of insectoid. Praying mantises seemed to be quite popular for a while, and often they were doing some kind of, let's say, hyperdimensional esoteric operations on people, usually involving rectal probes. Sometimes that was Rick Strassman. So people felt like they were often being operated on in a lot of these encounters. Elves, of course, always seem to be quite popular, although interestingly, Pascal just talked about in our research, we didn't actually get any specific elves out of the first 19 people in our experiment, which we're going to talk a little bit more about. What we're really interested in, though, is how can we have some kind of ontological triangulation of the reality of these things if they do exist in any kind of way beyond our own imagination. So, for instance, in one experience I talked about previously, you probably had an encounter with a little elfin woman on a bus. I happened to have been spiked with datura. I wasn't aware of it at the time, but so I had a couple of my students, or ex-students I should say, and they also encountered a little elfin person in these Indians. So it was a bunch of indigenous Indians in Brazil. Thought it was a good idea to spike 20 delegates from the Parapsychology conference with datura and not tell them about it. Seems perfectly reasonable. There were actually no casualties to that experience, which is quite astonishing, but it was probably the single weirdest night of my life with people. So Chris has done a good job of making some headway into this. Christian Imperial is starting to do brain imaging research and also looking at phenomenology, and his research so far with his kind of preliminary pilot study, the 12 people who tested, 9 of them had encounter experiences. We seem to have beaten that. We've now got about 95% entity encounters with our DMT field research. And of course we want to get to the kind of various kind of ontological positions about the nature of these beings and try and test them in some kind of way. And there's various kind of theories out there, you know, the constructivist neurotheological reductionist approach. The entities are just a kind of production of our own brain chemistry. The universal features appear because they're just hardwired into our kind of neural circuitry. But you know, how and why pro bono, proctologist, I'm so tired. Pro bono proctologist kind of praying mantises, why that's kind of hardwired into our brains, and they seem to pop up kind of reliably with DMT, so there's a whole other question. The other position might be a contextualist one, in that, you know, the events are all culturally mediated. There are memes out there about DMT elves and entities, of course, which have been around for a while, and in fact, in myself and Andrew's work, we went back to Zara's original reports as best we can. They're not actually extant anymore, but we did interview him, and we did find in some of those reports encounters with little people, dwarves in this case, rather malicious dwarves. And so, you know, the very first recorded DMT, pure DMT experience had encounters with little people. Now, is that a meme that's been just kind of propagated ever since Zara's first, you know, tested DMT on himself and his colleagues? Or is that something inherent to the DMT experience, devoid of the cultural context? Unfortunately, it's kind of an impossible question in a way, because you can't parse the two apart. You know, we are the sum total of our experiences and all the kind of cultural influences we've had, conscious or unconscious, throughout our lives. Then you kind of move on to more kind of extensionist, perennialist kind of position, you know, that there is this kind of extant kind of higher reality which you can tap into, and it may be, that could just be a personal psychological reality, it could be a collective unconscious, or it could be a freestanding entity, kind of riddled, hyperspatial other place, which has some kind of real ontological existence beyond us. That's mostly more the literalist kind of interpretation. So how do we kind of work out which one of those is like the best explanation for the data or the experience? We don't really know, but we did have a go at it, and you can check out our book, DMT Dialogues. We've kind of transcribed all the lectures from that meeting, and we've got the 10 best minds we could think of to discuss it, and we didn't really come up with an answer. But it's worth a read anyway, so do get the book. It's got a few good reviews on Amazon. I didn't write them all myself. So anyway, so to the research then. So we kind of discussed at length at various meetings, you know, how we're going to go about doing it. We drawn heavily on research from parapsychology, which for the last 135 years has been studying similar phenomena in a non-psychedelic context, you know, looking at ways of verifying communication with discarnate entities of the dead human variety, usually through mediumship or seances and all that kind of stuff. So that research has been going on for 135 years, and it's kind of running around a few kind of theoretical and technological problems. Mostly the difficulty is that even if you do find some kind of evidence that you've got information back from some supposedly discarnate entity, you can't really be certain that it isn't just good old common or garden telepathy or clairvoyance. So it's very difficult to actually rule out just all normal, everyday paranormal phenomena from actually communicating with real extant entities. But we thought we'd give it a go anyway. We're just kind of trying to map the trade. Just first of all, to start asking these kind of questions and researching this stuff really at face value. So I assembled a team of researchers. My good friend Rosie, Dr. Simon Ruffle, he's our kind of team psychiatrist. That's me, and Pascal. Oh, you've lost the belt. Padlet, and of course Maya Nays, who's actually an artist. She's been working on the project as a research assistant. And after this session with Andrew, after Andrew finishes speaking at about 6 o'clock, they're doing a kind of live, interactive, immersive performance based on the research, field research around DMT entities. There's going to be a whole crew of about 10 Chelsea art students doing an interactive DMT entity performance. So at 6 o'clock, do make your way out into the lawn for something completely different to this. So we thought, we're going to do all the kind of standard stuff, get a bunch of measures. That's what we do with scientists, we like measuring things. And what do we do? Oh yes, I hadn't expected these slides, largely because I was preparing it in the session beforehand, so that's kind of a nice surprise there. Yeah, so this is how it works. We kind of do social media recruitment first, and we'll get people in. We'd screen them with various measures to make sure they weren't completely mad, or at least, not completely mad anyway. A psychiatric screening assessment, just to make sure that that it's going to be relatively safe for them to do it. Although they're doing it under their own volition anyway. Online pre-DMT survey, they answer a bunch of questionnaires. Then they'd smoke the DMT with researchers, and then we'd have kind of follow-up questionnaires as well. But whilst we had them in the room, or rather whilst they had us in their room, we would do some experimental tasks with them as well. These are the measures we used beforehand. I'm going to go into too much detail. Various standard stuff, personality measures, absorption, partial seizures, kind of previous drug experiences and paranormal experiences, suggestibility scales, and a metaphysical orientation scale. What is their kind of basic belief about the nature of reality? And we should have asked them that whilst they're actually on DMT, that would be interesting. And then a bunch of measures afterwards, so looking at kind of trying to map the experience, the altered state, near-death experiences, mystical experience, more personality measures. And we also tried to come up with some hyperspatial task. This didn't quite work out. But one of the things that people often report on DMT is these kind of geometric patterns pop up quite a lot, but they usually have more than the usual 3 spatial dimensions as people reported. So we tried to devise a task of seeing if people were better at doing 4D recognition tasks. And it's very difficult to make 4D tasks because you can't even imagine it or see it. So that kind of, we abandoned that one after trying various things. We did get through quite a lot of high-dimensional mathematicians in the process. I don't know what, they all seem to kind of fall by the wayside, trying to work out how to do it. So this is the basic kind of structure. We had 5 basic experiments we were going to do. The first one was creative insights, shared visionary experiences, telepathy, precognition, and then 4D visual experiences. So the creative insight one was basically, we'd get people who are experts in their own domain of some kind of research discipline, particularly working on problems where there is no known solution to it, so that if they can see if they can get some kind of insight from the DMT experience and whether or not entities are kind of useful in that experience. So we were looking for people who had a particular specialism. We didn't manage to recruit many of those so far. But we've actually started this study. Pascal's talked about initial results. It's ongoing. We've had 25 people do it so far. We're looking for about 50 or 60, so it's kind of in process. Any DMT psychonauts out there, throw yourselves in our direction. And then we looked at kind of a shared, we also looked at a shared visual experience as well, so whether or not two people on DMT, or two or more people on DMT at the same time, are they actually having the same kind of visual phenomenon, visual mental phenomena in their experience? This is kind of quite tricky to get at, so we thought we'd start off just doing people individually first of all, which we did. So we started doing people with a simple precognition task. Basically they're trying to have to get back information from the future that they couldn't infer. And then we started pairing people up, so there'd be two people at a time, and they'd either do the shared visionary experience or a telepathic task, which they'd have to do under the influence of a high dose of DMT. And then finally we thought we'd do the 4D task, but we abandoned that, as said. We were going to try and use these kind of VR 4D toys as a kind of measure, and see if people are any better at doing the task, but it's not really a very good task, so we kind of threw that out the window. And we also realised as a possible control task, we might get people to run through non-Euclidean mazes, as it could be that this kind of supposedly extra-dimensional spatial geometry people see is actually just non-Euclidean rather than actually higher dimensional. We didn't get around to doing that. So this was based on, I don't know if I've got time to tell you about previous research, just about. So I tested out the protocol for the precognition task, and this is the basic structure for the telepathy task as well, but with slightly different, a slight variation. So the San Pedro, I did this first of all with San Pedro mescaline a few years ago. You probably heard about this if you've been to any of my talks. And I had hoped to test it on a lot of other people, but ended up having to do the experiment on myself. And so I took a big dose of mescaline and did 20 trials of this precognition task, whereby there was kind of four phases to it. You start off under the influence of the mescaline. I'm trying to do a visualization of what is the target. I didn't know what the target was, other than it would be a 1-minute video clip. Then I would see 4 1-minute video clips after I'd made a note of what my visualization was. So first of all, we write down what a visualization is. Then you see 4 1-minute video clips of unknown origins. And then I would rank order them, I'd vote on them to see how closely related they are to my visualization. So for instance, Matrix is kind of pretty close to what I saw. Some kind of overview effect was a little bit very unlike Rick and Morty, unfortunately, and a slight hint of Mary Poppins. And so that was kind of what you get a sense of what my DMT trips are like. My Psychedelic trip, sorry. And then, but I didn't know what the actual target is, and then we'd run a random number generator which would determine the target, and you'd find out if you were accurate or not. So there's no way you can infer what the target's going to be because it's selected in the future, completely arbitrarily and independently by a random number generator. But of course you could get the same one by chance, but we know what the exact probability of that is 25%, 1 in 4. So we'd expect to see that people kind of get the target, in this case me, more often than 25% of the time. So here's an example. I know that's just getting high on San Pedro. Give you a couple of quick examples. Let's move on to the other stuff. So this is my first go at it. Ancient Greek scene, eyes, city at night on a lake, and this was one of the 4 clips. Well, you get the idea. I mean, the video stopped and I was kind of gripping the table going, wow, that's really intense, what happens next? And then I realised I was doing an experiment on myself, and I looked down and it said, Ancient Greek scene. I was like, well, that's pretty good, because I hadn't seen the clips before. So I'll give you another example. This one was even better in some respects. Desert dunes, the sands of time.
They and other snakes, like the tough adder, can also move on their ribs,
not particularly impressive yet.
Groups and pulling the scales at the underside forward and over the rib tips.
But the video clip did change. I can't actually hear Dave Attenborough's voice anymore without thinking about what Gareth Bradbrook said. So yeah, that one was quite impressive. I mean, that's literally all I wrote down. I thought, okay, that's a bit of scenery, I can see what that is. I wrote it down, and sure enough, one of the 4 clips was that. and that was the one I chose, ranked the most high as the possible target. And of course, when we ran the random number generator, the computer said yes, which was kind of cool, because that's quite a good hit, I would say. Sometimes they're a bit more thematic, they weren't always so direct. So in this case, have you all seen this before? Some of you. How are you doing in there, man? No, you're not talking to you, I'm talking to your mate. That's so funny. Fantastic. So sometimes it's a bit more thematic, it wasn't so direct as, you know, sand dunes, desert, you know. So in this case it was rotating like a helicopter blade, space, more mechanical stuff, spacecraft, space skeletons, and then there was a second part to it as well, it's like water, submarine, a big rig but underwater. So something kind of floating, you know, not quite in space, maybe in space or in water, but something big and mechanical, and space skeletons. And sure enough, this was the clip I chose. No, not that one. Oh, that's one.
And the express. They're coming through!
So, you know, you get the idea. More mechanical stuff. It's like the Death Star, doesn't get more mechanical than that. Spacecraft, you know, the Death Star, spacecraft, space skeletons, stormtroopers, you know, do look a little bit like space skeletons, don't they? The helicopter blades, so you can see what Luke's pulling out his fantastic utility belt, can't quite see yet, get on with it, and grappling around, and then literally grappling around, because it's a grappling hook which he throws, and in a second you'll see. What time do you see this now? You'll see it's like, they look like helicopter blades. He's kind of grappling up. Then he snobs his sister, which I didn't predict that, of course, so it's not very accurate. But I didn't actually see, you know, oh yes, that clip from Star Wars, but all the themes are there from that clip, and of course then, when the computer ran the random number generator, the computer said yes again. If you don't believe me, stormtroopers look like space skeletons. Here's some images what I need off the internet. And so ultimately, in 20 trials doing that, I got a significant result of, you know, getting the target more than chance expectation. So that was encouraging. I found a protocol I could use. I'd done previous work with ayahuasca. It was a disaster, so I thought I've got a good protocol here. We also tested this out on 13 scientists who took part in a LSD study. I'm not going to say much more about that. Other than they also got a significant hit with just one trial on LSD and one trial not on LSD in blind conditions. They got a significant result in the opposite direction, which was a bit annoying. But it's still a result, it's still a significant result. How is it they get a significant result anyway? Well, I figured it might be something to do with the personality of scientists, because we found that their scores in the LSD condition and precognition were correlated with, very strongly with their personality dimensions. So those who were kind of high in neuroticism scored very low, and those who were high in extroversion and openness scored very well. So basically, scientists are not the best test subjects because they're mostly closed-minded, introverted, and neurotic. And those variables have been found to be related in the meta-analysis of other Psi research as being kind of good predictors of Psi scores, of ESP precognition scores. Fortunately, there is a remedy to being introverted, not very open, and neurotic. It turns out it's psilocybin anyway, so that's probably doing some good. Anyway, I digress. Finally then, the DMT. I had hoped to kind of come here like, with all the full singing, dancing DMT results. We've had 20 participants go through the precognition task so far. That was my kind of target number. I figured that was enough people to get the right power for the statistical analysis. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to analyse the data because I was busy organising this event, some event you might have heard of. And so I did have a look a while back at the first 10 subjects. I'm going to show you that data rather than the full data set. So there are 10 participants so far. They did this task, same visual task that I did. They did it in two conditions. They either did under the influence of DMT or not under the influence of DMT. And I'm going to say under the influence of DMT, we basically asked them, how intense is your experience now on a scale of 1 to 10, whilst they were in the DMT experience. With the anchors being 10 is, you can't actually say 10 because you're so dissociated, you don't even know what 10 is or who I am or anything like that, and 1 being normal. And of course, for the first few minutes, people say nothing, or they sometimes say 10, sometimes they even say 11, sometimes they laugh. But often they don't say anything for the first few minutes. And then as the kind of experience is less intense, we said to them, when it gets to about 3 or 4, when they say like 3 or 4 in intensity, we then go, okay, now visualize the target for the precognition task. I'll give you one example. We've got some better ones, but this is the one from the first 10 subjects. So I'm surrounded by floating seaweed-like creatures trying to show me what they are carrying inside. They were like nutrients carried inside a root, or like green blood for that creature's. Looks similar with human tissue under a microscope, and this was the clip, which is some kind of DNA kind of assembly. You get the idea. I didn't watch the whole thing. But it gets a bit better at the end as well. So that was the one they ranked most high in similarity, and it turns out that that's the one the computer also selected as the target after the fact. So that was our precognition task. Again. Whee! And he said, in reflection after, he said, the human tissue that I saw in the trip was very similar with the last part of the clip, where the circular cells were moving and creating other tissue and also creating beams of light. So just initial analysis, this isn't kind of, I've just on 10 subjects, so it's not kind of final. Also, I've run out of time. Basically, the effects are in the direction of DMT. Interestingly, there's a kind of negative effect in the no DMT condition, which is a bit puzzling. We've also got some order effects as well, and if you mix the two together, the DMT condition seems to be better when people do the task before, the task first on DMT, and then again afterwards. Very, very quickly, we're out of time, don't want to eat into Andrew's time. We're also looking at shared visionary experience. We're doing telepathy task, which is very similar, but we've only had a couple of participants do that so far, and we've had a couple of participants doing shared visionary experiences.